People are still coming in, but let's start on time and respect everyone's time. Today's webinar is on 5G and the wave that is coming. It's almost as exciting as the GameStop frenzied action, if anyone's following that, which is a really weird story. My 21-year-old son put me onto Reddit Wall Street Bets over the weekend, and it's fascinating to watch this play out. I have no stake and no opinion. But setting aside that, let's talk about 5G and building a business for the future. How can we layer the 5G wave that is upon us into our business, both today and tomorrow? This is an ongoing story. And I guess the theme that I'd like to get out there right now is that 5G is here, but 5G is a multi-year rollout. And so we're going to have phases. What we'd like to talk about today is phase one is upon us. It's become practical. What we've noticed and what we've all seen over the last 5 years is when 5G comes, when 5G comes, when 5G comes. Well, now 5G is here. And so what does that mean? We're very much in the early innings. If it was a baseball analogy, you know, I would argue that the first batter just dug into the batter's box. First pitch just got delivered, and now let's play the game. So let's talk about the realities of today and the possibilities of the future. So a little bit about BroadSky and why do we feel that we're an expert in this field. BroadSky has been doing wireless transport and only wireless transport since 2001. Our roots are in the satellite industry. That's what wireless was in 2003, pardon me. So we have a long history of providing wireless connectivity to businesses. We've marketed exclusively through the channel in all that period of time. So we're well familiar with supporting channel and channel management and working with all of the large master agents in the country. While that's not an endorsement of BroadSky, if you have an 18-year track record with these highly respected master agents, you've proven something over time and all the things that are important to us for any services. So again, not an endorsement, but certainly a track record. BroadSky was acquired by Epic.io about a month and a half ago, and we're operating as an independent business unit. From a practical matter, it doesn't really change anything other than there's been an infusion of capital and we have access to more resources. You see some minor look and feel changes on colors. But as far as a practical day-to-day basis, everybody who worked for BroadSky before still works for BroadSky now. This is not a synergy play where they're looking to cut costs and make it out that way. IntelliSite is now the other piece of this portfolio, I guess you'd call it, which is now we would call our sister company. IntelliSite is an Internet of Things provider, and we have a number of information pieces coming out on what's possible with that throughout the year, so please stay tuned for that. BroadSky has objectively, I guess, proven itself in the market in other ways. We've been on the Inc. 5000 list 4 years in a row. We anticipate being on in 2021 as well. We're also a two-time winner of the MSP 501 award. I see we were listed as a 2020 winner, but we're actually 2019 and 2020 winner. So that's 2 years in a row on that side. Locations, we're headquartered in Bend, Oregon. Distribution sites, Fort Mills, North Carolina, with offices across the country. Parent company is Epic.io, which is a formation of BroadSky and IntelliSite. And we roll up under both sides of that, and the synergies are coming on both sides of that. I don't want to distract from 5G, but IoT may be as big as 5G, and then when you combine the two together, you've really got something. So I would call this webinar series must-see attendance in 2021. So let's talk about 5G. We're seeing it everywhere. You see it on print, you see it on radio, you see it on television, you see it on internet pop-ups. These are just 3 screen grabs that we grab. All 3 carriers are pushing it. 5G is here, 5G is live, nationwide 5G, 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 5G. What does that mean? That's the sort of the topic of today's seminar is as a practical matter, how do we drill this into, how does this improve my end users' experience, profitability, and performance? And how does it translate into commissionable sales over the next 10 years? And so that's what we want to get into today. So what is 5G? So this is a busy slide. We built it out as sort of a layer cake is how we refer to this. And I'm going to look at the top first. That top level of the pie, if you will, is 5G millimeter wave. Now, for years, when we talked about 5G in theory, we were talking about millimeter wave. Millimeter wave is a very narrow signal that carries traffic at 1 gig and above with ultra low latency latencycy. And all this time that you've been hearing about 5G previous to 2021, that's what you likened it to. This millimeter wave thing, it's going to be faster, everyone can have it, and we're going to get rid of all cable circuits. 5G millimeter wave is still very, very limited in its availability. These are the things, the availability that's like downtown LA and Lincoln Park in Chicago, and they're putting it in stadiums. It's still very much not a test case, but a showpiece. The challenge of 5G millimeter wave is that the signal doesn't propagate that far, and it gets blocked when it hits a building. It gets blocked when it hits a car. It gets blocked when it hits your hand. You can also, the Verizon ultra wideband network is a classic 5G millimeter wave, and it is coming, and it is amazingly fast. But when we talk, all these ads that you're seeing from the carriers right now for 5G are not 5G millimeter wave. They're just not. That is a story that's probably going to play out in 2022. And we're going to weave those ideas into this, but the 5G that's being talked about all over the airwaves and all over the internet, and what your customers are likely seeing and what your customers are asking you about is 5G sub-6. This is spectrum that has been opened up by mostly AT&T, T-Mobile, although Verizon is participating somewhat. And it's the mid, what they call the mid-band spectrum, or sub-6 gigahertz. These are the frequencies that have been purchased up and are still being purchased up. If you followed this, there was a big C-band auction that concluded, I think, a week ago. $85 billion was spent on C-band spectrum. C-band used to be used for television and satellite. Now it's getting refarmed for LTE. And these are the frequencies and networks that have opened up and are available now and in the very near future. So we're going to talk about that mid-band of the layer, the sub-6, and then we're going to talk about the lower band, what we call classic 4G, and what's being done to enhance 4G to also use that. One point that's very important, the 4G frequencies and the sub-6 5G frequencies are always going to be a part of the solution. This is not going to be sunsetted. We've seen 2G get sunsetted. We're seeing 3G get sunsetted right now. The 4G frequencies are not going to get sunsetted. They're going to be part of the solution for 10 years. And nobody can see past 10 years, but they're definitely a part of this. So what we're deploying today will work for a long time. As we move up the stack to 5G millimeter wave, they'll still incorporate sub-6 and 4G frequencies into the solution. So we're not putting something out there that's going to have an automatic end of life, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. Yeah, so that's the layer cake on what's opened up. We're really going to focus on that 5G sub-6 gigahertz frequency bands with a smattering of 5G millimeter wave. Okay, great. So we have multiple voices on our webinar today. My name is Tom Benson. I'm the VP of Strategic Partners here at BroadSky. Also talking today will be Bo Barker, our VP of Technology, to sort of walk us through more of the details of what's available today and then the upgrade path of where we're going. A little bit of housekeeping. We do a Q&A at the end of every webinar, and there's two ways to lob in a question. There's a Q&A slot at the top of the Zoom, or there's a chat slot at the top of the Zoom. And if something strikes you and you want to ask a question, please put it into the Q&A as a question or put it into the chat as a question. And then what we do is we read the question for the benefit of everyone. And then we answer the question to the best of our ability to the benefit of everyone. And so that way we can get all questions answered. And then the Q&A usually engenders more Q&A as we go through it. So we're hoping for a robust discussion at the end of this. And then to answer the first question that usually comes out, this webinar is being recorded, and we will send out the entire video and audio recording to all participants on the webinar if you want to use it for training for your staff that may not have been able to make it. And that's emailed out shortly after we're done. So please lob your questions into the Q&A or the chat as we go through this. Okay, so Bo, we've got a nice timeline here, with some bars that go from left to right. Why don't you interpret this for everyone and make it into a meaningful information?
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, let's start from the bottom up, from past to forward. I think the 3G network, we're all seeing that being phased out. So no need to talk about 3G anymore unless we're talking some third world countries, maybe some global connectivity there. But in the United States, this is getting phased out. that spectrum got refarmed or is being refarmed for use in 4G and 5G networking. So then we moved up to this 4G timeline. 4G has been out for a while. We've seen some significant technology improvements over time with new modem classes and abilities to bond multiple frequencies from a given carrier. So as Tom stated, 4G is the fundamental, it's the foundation of this new 5G wave that's coming and will be around for a very long time. It is the core of this technology. Now we get up into and actually I'm going to skip over 5G millimeter wave because that's kind of what's coming. Again, as Tom said, 5G millimeter wave is not everywhere. It's on, some street corners here in cities and the stadiums and things like that. So for most deployments, you won't see this 5G millimeter wave quite yet. But what we did see at the beginning of 2020 was release of some handset and MiFi type devices that were capable of receiving millimeter wave where it was present. Certainly not enterprise grade hardware, enterprise class hardware, not something you'd want to incorporate necessarily into your network. So what we've been waiting for is really this sub 6 gigahertz. And with sub 6 gigahertz, the frequencies that they're using for 4G LTE will also be used for sub 6 gigahertz. So broadcast spectrum and coverage that's out there today, as the carriers convert the network, they're going to begin to dynamically share that spectrum between those two technologies based on demand. So that will eventually roll into an all 5G standalone core network sometime down the road. And what we'll see there is, at that point, the ultra low latency, the extreme high speeds, and we have some examples of that in some slides coming up here. But just to give you an idea of where things were and where they're going, this timeline is a pretty good general illustration of what ourselves and other industry experts have forecasted for the future of 5G and wireless communications.
Next slide.
Yes, please. So here we have kind of some of the comparative differences between those technologies. Like we started off with 4G, and when that first came out, carrier aggregation wasn't available, and then there was carrier aggregation. The carriers were improving their network, so we saw latency drop over time on average to roughly 80 milliseconds. And the upload and download speeds weren't terrible. You can certainly run businesses, you can run VoIP, you can run all those applications on standard 4G LTE. But then came out Gigabit Class Lte, which really was the beginning of the pathway, both in manufacturing and technology, to lead us up to 5G. So Gigabit Class Lte essentially required the modem itself and the hardware that the modem was in be at or above 1 gigabit of throughput to accommodate for future changes where we'll see those kind of speeds, hopefully ubiquitously. So again, latency dropped a little bit. Speeds certainly increased as we gathered more streams, more bands. We're seeing really high download speeds. Just as an example, close to me, I can do 140 to 150 megs. So that's really good for the area I'm in, which is considered somewhat rural. Upload speeds have increased over time as well. Now we're getting into, and because there aren't enough sampling, we're just now getting hardware released into the market, just now getting samples of real world speeds coming in with 5G sub 6 gigahertz. And so here we've illustrated that some of the max theoretical speeds that you can expect once the carriers, once the networks reach their full potential on the move up the chain to adding millimeter wave. With millimeter wave, and we'll illustrate some of those speed tests here in the real world on the millimeter wave networks. As you can see here, we've seen some huge jumps in speed. Latency hasn't changed much here. And so again, we'll see average latencies decrease as the move towards a true standalone 5G core network is put into play. So there's a bit of mix out there right now. But I guess the point here is that both 4G Gigabit Class Lte, 4G LTE on up through the sub-6 gigahertz, which is going to be the most prevalent technology, gives you the faster speeds, the lower latency, increases reliability, and there's quite a few reasons for that. And there's certainly, the carriers are growing their coverage. As Tom mentioned, $80-some billion with a B spent on spectrum, on just a small block of spectrum this year. And as you can imagine, the carriers are going to race to hit ROI on their spend. So we'll see how that comes out over the next month or two. Next slide, please.
So what we put on here is some of the new equipment that's come out that helps take advantage of this new sub-6. These are incremental gains to get to 5G sub-6. But by incremental, we're still talking about 2x speeds or 3x speeds that we can put out in the field. So BroadSky is heavily invested in the Peplink platform. We have been since 2015. The Peplink Cat 6 device that we put out for sort of our standard failover is something that we've deployed now. I think we have the oldest routers in the field are now 5 years old. Peplink has been a workhorse for us. It has a really nice back-end portal, really nice ability to get in and see what's happening, really nice ability to get in and set up your VPN tunnels. So Peplink has been a horse for us. They continue to innovate and stay on the front edge of this. And these are some of the new routers that are coming out that have 5G sub-6, and then also an expansion slot for 5G millimeter wave as we go forward. So the key to this is we can put out routers that are faster today, and then they also have an expansion slot for a millimeter wave device. So we're looking at a future-proof upgrade path once we put these in, where customers can see a 1 to 3x jump in speed today, and then anticipate a 5G millimeter wave pathway towards the future. These chassis do have the ability to be hot swapped. The timing you would do that on a 5G millimeter wave is A, when is it available, and B, when does it make sense to spend some money? It's worth noting that the first modules that come out for a 5G device will probably, 5G millimeter wave device will probably be circa $2,500 to $3,000 just to drop that modem in. And so some people will be at the very front of the curve because they need the speed. Others will wait for economies of scale to kick in and the cost to come down. Where you want to be, I assume, as a channel partner, as a channel professional, is be able to answer your customers' questions on what can I have today, and then what am I investing in towards the future, and give them a reasonable price ROI break of, if you spend this much, you'll get this back, and this is the performance you'll expect. And then people can make an intelligent decision on, when do I upgrade my network? Do I want to be an early adopter in the middle of the curve, or wait till it's become somewhat commodified? Some of the attributes of these routers are they have both 4G and 5G cellular radios inside of them. And then also there's redundant SIM slots, so we can drop multiple carriers into these. We can set these up so that they either A, fail back and forth between the carrier. So you're adding not just a wireless level of diversity, but a multi-carrier wireless level of diversity, where you can reach out to, as an example, Verizon and AT&T. Next level up on the upgrade path there is we can bond these together so that you're pulling traffic from Verizon and AT&T and T-Mobile all at the same time. And whichever one is delivering the fastest network experience on that day is where the majority of your download would come from. And also now you would have triple diversity reaching out to all three carriers. There's two flavors of bonding. You can either run it through the Peplink Speed Fusion platform, or BroadSky has a proprietary back-end platform that we run through cloud servers like AWS and Azure that runs even faster than Speed Fusion. So we're heavily invested in delivering overall speed. Some of the speed examples we've seen on 5G, we're talking about 2.1 gig, 900 meg up, to 1 gig to 600 meg. So when I started in this in 2014, we were talking about 15 meg down and 7 meg up, and we were pretty happy. Those speeds are now starting to become archaic. And these are breakthrough performance parameters that we can deliver out into the field, engineered so that it works right, and it's a startling upgrade in overall speed and overall performance. What this slide talks to is a little bit of the details between just even Gigabit LTE and sub-6. And the thing to focus on is the number of frequencies that are being broadcast, and all those frequencies become an available download channel. And this is where the speed came from. So the upgrade path in 2015 was you could pull it down from one frequency, 700 megahertz. That was it. That was 4G LTE, and it ran about 15 meg. Then we got into a point where what's called category 6, where we could bond two frequencies together, and we saw speeds double to about 30. Then the network started getting faster, and we started seeing that hit about 50. Now we enter in, and that's sort of older, but this webinar is about what's newer. The second to last upgrade was Gigabit Class Lte, which bonded 4 separate frequencies together. We outlined 4 of them here, but there's actually 17 available frequencies now. And what Gigabit Lte does is bond 4 of the 17 available. So if you think about channel bonding for T1s, or you think about any telecom solution, that you can't make one thing go faster, so you add one alongside of it, bond it together. That's what wireless is doing. You can only put so much speed through any one frequency, but if you start bonding them together, that's where you see rapid gains. So we can deliver this Gigabit Class 4 channel bonding right now, and you can get to download speeds of in the 100 meg range. This is a pretty affordable product. It doesn't cost that much more at BroadSky, but it's a startling, just, how do I want to say this? It isn't anything special anymore to be able to deliver this, and it doesn't really cost all that much more. So if it was me, this would almost become my base recommendation for clients. I would get them at a minimum into a Gigabit Class or category 18 router that can bond 4 frequencies together. I think that's going to be the new minimum standard. But jumping up from that, 5G sub-6 now bonds 7 frequencies together. And you can see this 3.7 gigahertz crept in. This is the new spectrum that's come out. That's what's considered mid-band in the 3.7. But if we just want to focus on why is it faster, because it's bonding 7 frequencies together. And the other big news here is that for the first time, we can bond upload channels. So I'm mousing over this high-loaded more upload. For the first time, we've sort of broken through that 10 to 15 meg up is about as good as it gets. The reason we could never go faster than that was because we could never bond on the upload. They were always focusing on the download. Now we have the ability to bond upload channels as well. And that's another key attribute when you consider how much zooming is going on and how much people are in an SD-WAN environment. If you're sending data from your site to another site, that's upload traffic. And limiting it to 15 now becomes a bottleneck. And we can finally break through that and at least bond 2 channels together and get it out there in the 15 to 50 meg range, as well as Zoom, I guess, would be the other one. That's all upload. And so everybody wants a quality Zoom connection. They don't want their camera to waver. When you fail over this, you now have access to more bandwidth and more speed. So if there's a point on why is 5G sub-6 faster, setting aside all the numbers and 3.7 and 3.9 and all that, just focus on it bonds 7 frequencies together on the download. And that's where the greater speeds come from, is that ability to meld all those together. Yeah. So let's talk about one application for this, Sd-Wan. Sd-Wan was the hottest thing going, and it's still a very hot thing going. There was a time when it was brand new, and now it's become a pretty standard tool in the toolbox for multi-location environments. So, what does Sd-Wan do? We all know what Sd-Wan does. It uses multiple inputs and outputs to generate an overall faster internet connection for both upload and download, and it also has built-in diversity because you have more than one stream coming in. So if any one provider fails you, then you can at least send it out over another provider. Our contention on Sd-Wan, and I believe this is logical and defensible, is that there should be a wireless connection within your Sd-Wan deployment, if for no other reason than to have a fail-safe connection. All of these wired circuits that are coming into the building, even if you have 4, are likely coming in on the same conduit. And the rules of backhoe and floods haven't changed. It's cut one, cut all, flood one, flood all. A wireless connection by definition is not in the ground and therefore is not cut in a terrestrial event like backhoe or flood. And so because these Sd-Wan deployments have become so critical and because everything's in the cloud, there's simply no margin to have a backhoe event and lose all connectivity anymore. So without getting into how fast it goes, every Sd-Wan deployment should have a wireless component. Now, one of the challenges we run into, assuming that's true, is that people order their appliance and it will have X number of Ethernet ports. Common ones are 2 and 4. Well, if you ordered it with 2 Ethernet ports and you bring in a wired circuit and an Ethernet handoff, or a wired circuit and a cable circuit and a fiber circuit, you've now taken up both Ethernet ports. But if you want to add a wireless component, previously the routers we deployed were all Ethernet handoff, and we would want to take over one of those Ethernet ports, but you didn't necessarily want to get rid of that cable circuit. So what do? The solution we came up with is we can now take our routers with all of the attributes that we've talked about before, and we can do them on a USB handoff. And the advantages of that are we don't take up an Ethernet port. B, a lot of these SD-WAN appliances, the software they wrote for wireless failover, where we'll only send a wireless if all wired connectivity disappears, is written natively to hand off to a USB device. But the USB devices until now have been pretty junky. They're the MiFi type jetpacks that just aren't enterprise grade. BroadSky solved this now by being able to put our routers out with a USB handoff that maps to the failover software in the SD-WAN appliance without really having to go in and tweak it, and doesn't take up an Ethernet port. So we can provide that fail-safe connectivity at a minimum on a USB handoff. The second reason I bring in a wireless circuit in an SD-WAN deployment is if you don't have a good second circuit available. If your second circuit is DSL, DSL now kind of equals dial-up from a performance standpoint, and then we all know the carriers don't want to be in copper anymore. So DSL, for all intents and purposes, is just not practical. It's not fast and it's going away. Let's bring a wireless circuit in that runs fast, plug it into an Ethernet port, and now we do have at least 2 viable circuits to use for our SD-WAN device. Okay. Third point on why we go for SD-WAN is that BroadSky has the ability to engineer this so that your connections are unbreakable. In a standard failover environment, if all of your wires got cut, yes, you'd fail over to wireless, but all of your current sessions would disappear. And then they would re-engage when you go else. Well, if 25 people are on Zooms or et cetera, and all your VPN connections drop and all your current sessions go away, that's an impact to your business. The alternative to that with unbreakable connectivity, and this is something that BroadSky does engineer, is that we can shift the traffic over to the wireless session and keep all sessions valid. Zoom calls don't drop, VoIP calls don't drop, VPN sessions don't drop. It should be unnoticeable to the end users in their daily work. We consider that to be, it's an engineering feat, but we believe it's an important engineering feat. If you're going to have failover, it might as well be unbreakable failover. And then finally, if we can get access to that Ethernet port, all of the previous speed gains that we were talking about before can be just plugged right into that Ethernet thing. So we can put it in a 4G or a 5G or a blended 4G, 5G solution, or a bonded 4G, 5G solution, where we can actually bond 2 carriers together, get all the speed available from them, hand it off to an Ethernet port, and now that wireless Ethernet route is as fast or faster than the cable circuit or fiber circuit that's in there. There's a lot of flexibility and a lot of performance that comes from these wireless appliances, which directly lead to why people put in SD-WAN in the first place. So that's sort of our argument and our concept of why every SD-WAN appliance should have some form of wireless connectivity in it, whether it's just for fail-safe connectivity, using the USB and the organic and native failover software to work as designed, or deliver real speed and another path out that runs as fast as a wired circuit. So SD-WAN and wireless are a natural fit. So Bo, I'm going to bring you back on to speak to these. I think some of these are you. And this is a little bit of eye candy. This is us going out and finding the fastest speeds possible that have existed, just to see what's coming in the future. Now, these are coming on phones that are in some cases accessing, Bo, I believe these are accessing millimeter wave, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So the challenge of this slide and these challenges is it's very exciting to see these speeds on a cellular circuit, and yet these are coming in on a phone. Millimeter wave modules or chipsets or modems, whichever term you want to use, have not yet been released to put into a router form factor. We're still dealing with enhanced 4G and sub-6 5G. The second millimeter wave chipsets, modems, are available to put in a router. We will tell you. However, I'll go back to my previous point. The chassis that we're putting out there now are hot swappable to a millimeter wave modem. So We pull out one modem and we drop in a millimeter wave modem, and now that performance is there. Also, we can engineer it with external antennas to make sure that that signal that's coming in on the outside of the building can be brought into the inside of the building. When millimeter wave comes, it will not penetrate the building. You have to have a strategy to get that signal inside. There are no exceptions to this rule. And so BroadSky has been in the business of installing external antennas for 19 years. You don't need an external antenna for anything but millimeter wave. I want to make that very clear. You can put an antenna up for enhanced performance, but it's not required. When we get to millimeter wave, we're going to be talking about antenna installs. But Bo, I'm saying that right, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of our key strengths in this marketplace right now is our installation experience, geared centric to wireless technology. Millimeter wave receivers will have to go on the outside. There's some stuff getting cooked up to try to bring it through windows, but even a standard window blocks much of that signal. So the best, easiest, cleanest path is to get that millimeter wave remote radio outside where it can pick up that signal.
Yep, so there's two paths to pick up 5G. You can either put an antenna on the outside and drag it in, or you can actually mount the router on the outside of the building. And we have the ability to do that as well. It's a router that's in an enclosed weatherproof station. It picks up signal outside the building, and then you Ethernet it back in. If we don't want to remember all these details, then remember the concept. When it comes to getting 5G to your customer, BroadSky knows how to engineer the solution. What roadblocks there will be that I believe other carriers are going to go, I don't know, I just can't get it yet. No, we can solve for it, and there's specific ways to solve for it. And the ways to solve for it are things that we've been doing for almost 2 decades. So delivering that solution is every bit as important as designing it. And we have the ability to deliver that solution. So just these are startling speeds. This was almost a 2 gig download. So we're looking at the future, but the future is rushing towards us. And this is going to upend a lot of decisions about what do we use as our primary circuit, what can we rely on a backup situation, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to be talking about these things and then know when it's time to deliver them. So how do we sell 5G today? The good news and the bad news. The good news about wireless has always been it will work 99% of the time if you order it from BroadSky. We'll put it on the right carrier. We'll deliver the right gear to make sure it works, and you'll get speeds from 15 to 50. And that's a really nice business. And we've been in that business for just that for 6 years and have been rewarded for it in the market, et cetera, et cetera. Now that we're moving to 5G, the bad news is it's getting more variable. We can deliver more, but we have to design it more. And we have to walk people through what can you have now and what are you buying for an upgrade path in the future, and when does it become available, and when should I do this? BroadSky can help you walk through all of those decision points so the customers are putting in something that's profitable now and know that they're preparing themselves for what's going to be available down the road. And I made that point before, but I'm going to make it again. It's a little bit more like an Sd-Wan deployment or a VoIP deployment where we're going to dig into the details a little bit more versus just putting SIM cards in a router, sending it out, and it works great. That's still valid. But when we get to 5G, there's going to be more design. So BroadSky Tech Support and BroadSky Engineering is highly versed in this. We have the 5G gear, the sub-6 gear, the blending of all frequencies 4G gear is already on our bench and being tested. We have it in the field already. We're proving how it works. In many cases, we're consulting with the manufacturers for the next iteration of their gear because we buy so much and because they've learned to rely on us for how does this work in the field versus how does this work in the lab. And so it's a great time to talk to your BroadSky channel manager in your region to find out what's available for your customer and start answering these questions from end users as to 5G. I'm seeing it everywhere. What does it mean to me? And so that's what we would encourage you to do. So top 5 takeaways. The 5G marketing hype is everywhere, and we're seeing it constant. This is going to generate a question wave from end users. One of the dynamics I've noted is that if you compare this to say Sd-Wan, when Sd-Wan came out, nobody was advertising Sd-Wan on Google. Nobody put an ad up for it on cable television at night. As a channel pro, we would go take the new technology out to the customers and then show them how it would work. 5G is going to be different. 5G is going to be heavily marketed and heavily hyped. And then customers are going to say, well, this is, I should be getting on this wave. How does it work? So the demand curve is going to come from a different direction than it did for traditional deployments because of the marketing muscle that's being put behind it. Customers need a guide to implement 5G profitably. We don't want to put people into something where they spend too much money for something that doesn't really give them a return at this time. Instead, we want to deliver a real world performance they can see now, and to give them a real upgrade path as it moves forward over the next 1 to 3 years. Today's 5G, which is sub 6 gigahertz 5G and blending frequencies, is deliverable now. Speeds of 100 meg down to 300 meg are what we should be focusing on, and then putting ourselves in a position to get that 1 to 2 gig down as millimeter wave becomes available. That's the future-proof 5G installations. And then as every new model is coming out from the credible manufacturers, BroadSky is already testing them, already proving them out, already suggesting tweaks and translating real world from lab as to how this is actually working. And then we get into that feedback loop with the programmers and with the manufacturers, such that we're usually, and I think this will continue, 6 to 18 months ahead of most, because we're getting the demo gear sent to us first, so that we can put it in the field and test it ourselves and say, this is what's actually happening as it's deployed out in the field. That's this kind of the position we've always been in wireless, and that's the position we intend to stay in wireless. Okay, who do I talk to? So this is our distribution of where BroadSky sales assets are in place. Please look to where you sit, not where your opportunity sits. So in the Midwest, talk to Ash Kakish, Northeast, Kevin Brennan, Southeast, Todd Hulsenbeck, Southwest, Maureen Donovan, and Northwest, Jim Miller. If you have a white label opportunity where you would like to buy the services and then turn on your paper and then turn around and resell it, that's what I do. That's what we call white label wholesale. All right, so we're going to go to the Q&A. I'm going to leave this map up here, and I'm going to start. I had a question from Bob. Bob said, can I get a copy of this presentation? Yes, you will. Anyone who's on this webinar will get a copy of not only the presentation, but the audio recording of the presentation, including the Q&A. And that will be sent to everyone who's on this call shortly after it's over with. Okay, and then a question from Kevin. Kevin asks, how long do you think it will take for the carriers to catch up when it comes to hardware in the market? It seems to be a laggard for most applications, lack of hardware. Yeah, Kevin, great question. What you're sort of speaking to here is, and I'll go back in time to 2014 and actually to 2012. 4G started getting marketed in 2012. And the ad I remember most distinctly was grandma held up a phone at it, or mom held up a phone at a dance recital. Grandma's in front of her computer because she couldn't make it. And she held up her phone and it got streamed, and grandma had it in front of her screen and she saw her granddaughter up there dancing, and it worked perfectly. That was marketed heavily in 2012 and 2013. The catch was it didn't work. You couldn't do that in 2012. There was no way you had those kind of speeds. When 4G hit, actual 4G hit, you could. And now we call it FaceTime, or we call it Periscope, if Periscope still exists, or we call it Facebook Live. Everything that was promised in 2012 came true, but it wasn't true in 2012. You're seeing some of that same thing happening now. The marketing curve on 5G has started. They're using the same model. They're going to talk about all the things that are going to be possible on 5G and imply that they're possible today. But the reality is it's going to be, well, let's say it like this. Last time it was about 8 years from promise to delivery. FaceTime's worked perfectly for 2 years now. So let's say 4 years or 6 years, 2012, 2018. We're going to see something similar to that, but it's coming. These speeds are going to be there. This low latency is going to be there. Driverless cars are coming. Virtual reality is coming. All these things are happening, and BroadSky will be there to be able to translate it for you as it comes out. Oh, I'm sorry. There's another question in the Q&A. I'm just going to jump back over here. Okay, and Bob asks, how do I compete against the direct carrier reps? Bob, that's a great question.
Really good question.
The direct carrier reps will have two they'll have one statement that they will make ubiquitously, and then one challenge that they can't solve. The statement they'll make ubiquitously is this: my network works everywhere. Doesn't matter where you go, you'll have signal. They have to say that, and it's not true. BroadSky has delivered 12,000 devices in the field, 15,000, a lot of devices in the field, into the thousands. And our process for delivering, it goes like this. We look up the site, we look up the address, and then we go to various tools to see what actual speeds are being delivered at that address. It's part of our gold standard of qualification for services. We see over and over and over again a widely varying actual speed test from that address between the three carriers. Numerous times we'll see, and this is an arbitrary answer. T-Mobile average download speed 85 meg. AT&T average download speed 12 meg. Now in that case, we would put that router on T-Mobile, obviously. But if you didn't do that qualification tool, you might just put it on AT&T and you'd get 12 meg. And then you say, well, that's good enough. But if you just put it on T-Mobile, you'd have 6x the speeds. We do this all the time. And that, again, that's arbitrary. In different regions of the country, you'll see one of the three carriers often have the strongest performance, and then the other two just not as good. On average, we see, I think Verizon's in the 45% range based on quality standards, and then the other two carriers will fill out the other two. So it's not quite third, but it's close. So the direct carrier rep, to answer your question, Bob, is stating something that is going to work everywhere, but in reality, they're going to have a widely varying performance curve, and then they're going to wonder, why does it work so well in Utah, but it's not working so well in Ohio? And no one's going to be able to answer that question. Versus selling it through a BroadSky where you're going to get the best carrier performance at every location. And to the second part of your question, the carrier reps don't recommend gear. They don't have the ability to sell a complete solution. So they'll give you the SIM cards, but now it's up to your end user, it's up to your customer to decide, what do I put this into? There are 100 choices as to what I drop my SIM card into, and they, again, all have widely varying performance. And they also don't have the greatest turn up and turn down. I'm thinking of Cisco Meraki as an example. Turning up a SIM card in a Cisco Meraki embedded SIM solution is difficult. It can be done, but it's difficult. And a lot of end users sort of throw up their hands and quit as they get into, I don't have the right carrier, I don't know how to administer my gear, I don't have anyone to talk to, I don't have time for this, this is supposed to be easy, what do I do? So a direct carrier rep only has part of the solution and it's incomplete, versus a BroadSky solution will work far faster and work far better. Bob wants to be a BroadSky ninja. Do we offer a program? Maureen, I believe you could speak to that.
Yeah, it's a great question. We actually have on our, I guess, to-dos, but our plan is to have a certification program for the partners. It's not done, and I would say just with recent events, it'll be this year, but it's probably not. I would say six months out, probably at least. So as far as becoming a BroadSky ninja, we are happy to help. So whichever channel manager you're working with, schedule regular time with them, I would say, and because they will work with you to really educate you as much as you want to be educated. And then we also always have these great webinars that Tom and Bo put on. All of our webinars are always on our YouTube channel that you can go back and listen to old ones. And so it's really a great resource. So look for a certification program coming, but utilize the resources, which is our team right now, and we'll help you out.
Yeah, the BroadSky YouTube channel has every webinar we've ever done, as well as some marketing support and some short-form video that can be used either for education purposes or marketing purposes. Each one of them runs about an hour, so I don't know that you want to binge watch it. But then again, maybe you do if it's that compelling. A lot of common themes come up throughout that we talk about, and the common themes are this: BroadSky harps on quality and harps on throughput and harps on it actually working in their device. I can't tell you how many examples we hear for competitors who got into this more recently, I'll just say it like that, who think this is going to be easy. I'll just slap a SIM into a router that didn't cost that much, and I'll put it out there and it works, and then it doesn't. In fact, one of the case studies we put out there for a large national retail chain, with resources is they tried to deploy this over 1,000 site deployment for a period of a year on their own, and it just didn't work. They came to us and we had all the sites that they tried to deploy up and running within 6 weeks, and then they went ahead and deployed the next 1,000 on us. They've gone into one of our largest customers, and it was solely because we got it to work. Getting a wireless solution to work in one location is probably, you can probably hack through that, but when you start trying to deploy to multiple locations, you really need someone like us to sift through all the problems of gaining signal, making sure it works right, and then making sure it interacts with all the applications. This is what we do every day, and this is all we do. Joe asked a question, are there throughput limitations on 5G service? Okay, that's a great question. Well, if I said throughput limitation, what would you answer?
I would say that yes, there are. However, that top end is very high. So two components there. One's the piece of the hardware that the modem rests in. How fast can that processor, those ports operate? Like we were talking about earlier, most of this hardware that's been designed for 5G, the hardware itself can do a gigabit per second of processing, gigabit per second of information. Then on the really high top end, yes, there is a max theoretical speed that 5G won't exceed, and I think we're a ways off from that, but we're talking multi-gigabit per second. So those are kind of the two, hardware and network technology are the two limitations, in so much that like copper can only carry so much. An older laptop will speed test out much slower than a newer one on the same circuit. A couple of examples there.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Bob, if that didn't answer fully your question, or if you had a specific use case in mind, go ahead and lob it in now, and we'll attempt to answer it, or call your channel manager, and we'll deep dive further into that. It sounds to me like there's a high-end speed requirement that you need, and we'd love to try to take a shot at that as to how fast can we go. Matt asks, is there a client-facing version of this deck? Oh, Joe asked, monthly throughput limitations in gig. No. Okay, so Joe did a follow-up question. Is there monthly throughput limitations in gig, meaning how much data I can put through? No, you can put as much data as you want through this. I think Joe's sort of speaking to, is there a cap? We hear about these caps in wireless. BroadSky sells an uncapped service that doesn't have a native limitation 98% of the time. Or said another way, if you need an application that's going to use high gig, we will definitely engineer a solution that's high gig and never slows down. We want to pay attention to cost there. Wireless is still a metered service. There's a wrinkle out there where it's unlimited data, and it is unlimited data. Unfortunately, unlimited data is not unlimited high-speed data. And so you want to be aware that if you're deploying something that's unlimited, what's the speed cap, or what's the gig cap for high speed? Oftentimes it's set at 20 or 25 or esoteric numbers like 42, just so people don't pay attention. But when you get to that point, all of a sudden it slows down, and it slows down dramatically to crawl speed. And then people are wondering, if something happened to my circuit, what's wrong? It's the 15th of the month and I'm going 1 meg down. It isn't nothing wrong with technology. You just hit your speed cap, and you see that in satellite too. There's definitely throughput limits. So BroadSky can engineer high throughput circuits, but we want to be aware of cost on that. We want to make sure that if this circuit's going to cost $1,000 or $2,000 a month, that's a profitable circuit, and that we're making money on that. We don't want to put this in for primary when wire is available. You can put as much, you can put as many gigs as you want over a wired circuit, and then you want to use us for backup or for traffic acceleration, not as the primary circuit when you can spend $150 a month. But on the flip side, you want us there to fail over to if that $150 a month circuit goes away. Okay, and then Matt asked, can we provide a client-facing version of this deck? The deck that comes out, I guess if it was me, I would drop off just some of the BroadSky contact stuff, but the rest of it looks very customer-facing to me as far as answering questions and delving into the differences between what frequencies are available now. So yes, please use this as customer-facing. And then if you want to contact your channel manager about looking for something that's more tailored for your opportunity, we can definitely help you with that. And I think Maureen had a thought on that as well.
Yeah, you know, when this comes out, it comes out as a PDF, so I don't, unless they have the tools to chop that off. But if they do want to chop off the channel manager page, just reach out to their channel manager who can get that done for you.
Okay. Yeah, we'd love to get involved. Presentations are nice, but step one is always scoping. We'd love to get involved and help scope. You know, a typical broad sky scoping engagement is just how many sites and what do you need it to do? Are we going to be a primary provider, or are we going to be in balance with the rest of your Sd-Wan, the rest of your Sd-Wan circuits in order to accelerate certain traffic, or are we just going to be primary because you can't get anything else? If we start getting applications like oil, gas, alternative energy, or people who run their business on site at someone else's business, we tend to be primary. We start getting into retail chains, quick serve restaurants, finance, we tend to be backup. And then there's always that sort of muddled middle of sometimes we're primary, sometimes we're backup, depending. One example of a blend there would be, we do a lot of store openings for retail and QSR and really anything where people are going to be on site on January 5th, but the wired circuit's not showing up until January 21st. What do we do? In that case, we deploy a wireless router. People run on us for 2 weeks. Their wired circuit gets delivered, and then we become the backup circuit. We've done that 5,000 times. We do it all the time. So it's a great method of getting internet on site when you need it. Another example of primary use is for pop-up. Someone's going to be somewhere for 3 days or 5 days, and they need high-speed, reliable internet just for that period of time. And then they're going to take their show to the next city. We solve that all the time. And so the speeds that I guess we're getting to application mode here. Faster speed is great, but what do we do with it? Everybody likes faster speed, of course. Those are some examples of where we've delivered over and over and over again is pop-up, temporary, opening, fiber install fail, and then moving in and hard to reach, and then moving into backup and traffic acceleration. Okay, Bob asked a question. Okay, Bob also mentioned POTS replacement for elevators. It's outside the scope of this presentation, but thank you for bringing it up, Bob. BroadSky is selling a wirelessly delivered POTS alternative. If you have noticed, and I'm sure you have, POTS signs are disappearing all across the country. If you have a need for alarm line, fire alarm, or elevator lines, because the copper is going away, and the copper is going away, please reach out to your BroadSky channel manager. We have an alternative solution for that that is proven to work. Okay, Matt asked, what about a live session for clients? You present this well, thank you. And it would be interesting what questions the team could also field after a client-facing session. A live session for clients is something that we do frequently. We're very good at, again, it kind of goes back to scoping, but the classic first start for a complicated deployment, or anybody who has just questions, is to get BroadSky channel manager, someone from BroadSky engineering, for instance, Bo, who's very good at client facing, and the customer to talk about what do we need, what applications do we need to make work in what manner, whether it's failover or primary, and is this going to work? Second, we do a fair amount of POCs around here for customers who may be skeptical. Wireless has a skeptical component to it. Throughout its history, it's been overpromised in the beginning, and people who have early adopted or gone with the wrong vendor will find that the application didn't work, and then that belief will go into their head that wireless just doesn't work for me. Whereas it would have worked fine if we would have just deployed it right. The solution to that conundrum is the POC. We'll put a POC out in the field for a month. We'll assign 10 gig of traffic to it. The client uses it for a month, and we prove it out. When it works, and it will, but when it works, then they deploy that router, and then they deploy the rest of the routers on what we've proven across their installation. On the off chance that they just don't like it or it's not for them, they have no further obligation. Return the router to us. There's about a $100 fee for the POC, which basically just covers the gigs of traffic we put through it. But other than that, there's no contractual. They just send our gear back and we're done. So it's a low risk way of proving this versus kind of getting stuck in theoretical design and, well, it didn't work last time. I don't know if it's going to work this time. That's our method for avoiding that stick, I guess, in the process. Okay, Don asked a question, how to add this to an existing SD-WAN network run by another provider? So I'm going to give a basic answer, and then I think there's going to be a follow-up question. Here's the basic answer. If you have an available Ethernet port or you need USB, just plug us in. But the second part of your question was run by another provider. Now, if it's a fully managed SD-WAN solution where they've deployed the appliance and the connectivity, and you bring in a rogue circuit, if you will, or an independent circuit that they didn't order, we're going to have to talk to them because if they control the programming and they control when does traffic go to Ethernet port X and I'm sitting in Ethernet port X, then we're going to have to talk to that provider to say, we've brought in wireless connectivity. It's going to be used for this purpose. It's sitting in this port, and this is how we need it programmed to fail over or utilize this port when necessary. So there's no technical challenge, but there's going to be an operational challenge when we put it in there, assuming it's sort of a closed box environment, sort of a walled garden. We'll need to get that SD-WAN provider involved to be able to utilize that asset, that circuit asset that we just brought in. And I hope that answers your question, Don. I think you have a specific use case behind that or an opportunity. Perhaps reach out to your channel manager to discuss it further. Okay, so that's all the questions on the Q&A side. And I'm just going to move back over to chat to make sure I don't miss anything. No, I haven't missed anything there. All right. So this is a monthly webinar series, and thank you all for taking an hour to spend with BroadSky this morning or afternoon, depending on your location. The next webinar that we're putting on will be in the month of February, and it will be talking about Internet of Things powered by our sister company, IntelliSite, and a deep dive of all the equipment and all the possibilities there. I can tell you that in the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, my eyes have been opened to numerous opportunities that I was barely aware of or am just now becoming aware of. And I think people on the call who are looking for new information and new opportunities such as this will be equally interested in the granularity of what's available on monitoring devices in an IoT basis. We're very excited about being able to deliver these opportunities and these solutions on a go-forward basis. It was something that was a hole in our portfolio that has now been filled. So please attend next month's webinar, and we'll be talking about that. I'll go around the horn with BroadSky. Maureen or Bo, did I miss anything or anything that you would like to add?
No, great job, both of you. Really appreciate everybody's attendance. We love doing these, so we hope you love coming to these. We do have a great spiff going on again this quarter, same as last quarter, so you can earn a lot of extra money. So if you can't find it on your master partner website, reach out to your channel manager, and they'll get that info to you too.
Okay, great. We are right on the hour mark. BroadSky, we're timely. And so thank you again for everyone for attending. Please look forward to this presentation being sent to your email inbox, and please reach out to your local channel manager with any opportunities or idea sets that came out of today's presentation. Thanks again.
Thank you, everybody.